Hey everyone, I'm Andrea, your real life English fluency coach, and today's lesson is really going to help you with those pains you have about learning English. I'm going to give you the best tips and tricks that you can start learning and using so that you can speak English faster, but also understand natives better, even when we speak fast. So we have 6 main tips and tricks for you today, and it's important to note that although you think that we do speak English fast, it's more about the way that we speak rather than the speed. Before we get into the lesson, I want to let you know that we are here to guide you beyond the classroom, to live and learn and speak your English in the real world. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell down below so that you don't miss any of our new lessons. Now, let's get into today's lesson. So my first tip today is to learn and use contractions. Now, you probably know what contractions are. So instead of saying I am, for example, we would shorten that to I'm. And instead of saying I have, we could say I've. And instead of saying do not, we would say don't. Okay, so those are just a few examples. But what I tend to find is that learners think that contractions are an informal way of speaking, which actually is not true. And for this reason, they're afraid to use them. But I'm here to tell you that you should use them. Contractions are part of everyday native speaking, and they really help to make your speaking more efficient and, more importantly, more natural. So it's really important to learn them because natives use them all the time. So if you're aware of them, you can understand us better, but also when you're speaking, you can use them, and this way your English speaking will be more natural and also a little bit faster. Contractions are useful and you can use them in the workplace when you're speaking with your colleagues. You can also use them when you're giving a presentation. The only time where I might say be wary of how often you're using contractions is if you are writing a formal piece of writing for university or for your work, for example. So just be cautious in that scenario. In my teaching experience, I've also noticed that when reading, students tend to ignore the contraction and actually say the full version of the words. So for example, if they're reading, instead of saying don't, they will read it as do not. And I think this is just something that tends to happen because people think that you shouldn't use contractions and it is more informal. So now we're going to take a look at a couple of contractions that students tend to find difficult to pronounce. Okay, so the first one is we're. Now, I find that students find this one a little bit difficult because it's very similar to were. And we're here means we are. So for example, instead of saying we are going to the supermarket, you would say we're going to the supermarket. But because it's so similar to were, the only difference is that apostrophe. I tend to find that students find this one a little bit more difficult to pronounce. Another tricky one is I'd. Now, this one isn't as difficult to pronounce, but it could mean either I would or I had. So sometimes that tends to give a bit of confusion. For example, I could say, I would like to go to the cinema, and instead, I'd like to go to the cinema. Instead of saying, I had better call my mum back because she called me earlier, for example, I could say, I'd better call my mum back. So sometimes there's confusion there as to which contraction that really is because it could be 2 options. Do you find contractions difficult? If you do, give us a like down below so that we know, and that way we'll make a lesson for you explaining how you can master them. So my next tip for you today is to use connected speech. Now, this is the way that natives speak in a very natural way, and in fact, it's a way that natives of any accent speak. We don't pronounce all the sounds in words, and we actually tend to connect words together. So whilst you might think that we are actually speaking fast, it's more that we are shortening the words or we're connecting words together, which makes it sound like we are speaking fast English. The more you study this, listen to it, and even speak in this way, the better you will understand natives and you will start to speak English faster too. You don't have to speak in this way if you don't want to, but you will have to learn it if you want to understand natives better, and also if you want to understand your favorite TV shows and movies, because this is the way that natives speak and is much more natural to us. And so for you to understand natives better and also your favorite media, I highly recommend that you learn connected speech. A great way to do this is with our other YouTube channel, Learn English with TV series, where we have so many lessons where you can learn connected speech, vocabulary, pronunciation, and much, much more, all with your favorite TV series, movies, and even songs. So you can click the link up here or in the description box below to check it out straight after this lesson. So I'm not going to go fully into the mechanics of connected speech because this would be a lesson in itself. If you do want this and you would like to see a lesson on this in particular, let me know below in the comments and we will try and do that for you. So I am going to give you some examples of connected speech, and one thing that Americans tend to do a lot more, but Brits also do in English, is to reduce verbs. So instead of saying going to, we'll say gonna. Instead of saying want to, we'll say wanna. So it's really important to learn these so that when you're speaking or listening to native English speakers, you can understand what they are saying. Another type of connected speech is the American T or the glottal T. So an American T is also called a tap T, and that's like, for example, instead of saying got to, they reduce the verb, so they say gotta, but that's with a true T. They would actually say gotta. So what that is my tongue is just tapping the roof of my mouth. That's why it's called a tap T, and it's a different sound. So instead of saying gotta, they say gotta. And a glottal T, for example, in British English is where you don't hear the T. So instead of saying water, I might say water. And what's happening there is the flow of air is being stopped and then released. So you don't hear the T sound, but there is a sound there, the stopping of the releasing of the air. So we hear it in words such as water, I would say water. And you can hear it in other words such as butter, you might say butter. And that's a glottal T. Another example of connected speech is the reduction of the H sound at the beginning of words. And this is very common in British English, specifically in the north of England, as well as in more Cockney English in London, which is more of the east side of London. So instead of saying, I have to go to the supermarket, some people might say, I have to go to the supermarket. Or instead of saying, I had a great time at the party, someone might say, I had a great time at the party. So there's also the reduction of the H, which is a form of connected speech, and it's really important to learn these and to understand them, to understand natives better. Wouldn't it be great to learn English without getting lost and without getting bored? Well, now there is. With our Real Life Native Immersion course, we will take you on a 41-week real-life adventure of the English language, each week exploring a different topic related to our goals to help you understand and use real native English and making it a permanent part of your life in a fun, natural, and convenient way. And the best part is, you can try it right now for free with our 3-part Power Learning series. All you have to do is click up here or in the description box below to learn more and sign up now. Now, let's get back to today's lesson. My next tip for you today is to decide which accent you want to adopt. Now, some learners choose not to even think about this, or they don't even realize, and they just want to learn English. Whereas some students actually really think about it and think about the type of accent that they want to have. Now, you don't have to do this. So you have a choice. You absolutely don't have to change your accent. Many students like to have their own natural accent when speaking English, and it does tend to sound more exotic too, which isn't a bad thing. It's actually really, really nice. For example, Sofia Vergara speaks amazing English, but she does have a strong accent. And also Arnold Schwarzenegger is a great example because he speaks English really, really well, but he does have a strong accent also. However, if you do have aspirations to adopt an American or a British or even another English accent, I do recommend that you make that decision quite early on and that you're consistent with it, because that's really going to help you. You'll be able to know where to find your resources as well. And once you start with it and you're consistent with it, it's really going to help you to speak English the way that you want to. We made a great lesson on this over on our channel, Learn English with TV series, where we looked at the accent of the famous Bollywood actress Deepika Padukone, and she speaks amazing English, but she does have a strong Indian accent. So this is a great lesson to check out. You can click up here or in the description box below to watch it straight after this lesson. So my next tip for you is to pay attention to stress. Now, this is really important, and a way of looking at it is looking at content words versus function words. So content words tend to be nouns, adjectives, and verbs. Those are words that really have a meaning, that are really important in a sentence. And function words are auxiliary verbs or prepositions and some others that link those other words together to complete the sentence. So what natives tend to do when we speak is you really hear those content words. So you will hear those words, we stress them, they are more prominent in the sentence, and those function words tend to be lost, or sometimes we say them very quickly, or they're connected to other parts of the sentence, so they are not stressed as much as the content words. For example, in the sentence, I'm going to the shops. What do you think the content words are there? I'm going to the shops. So there, the content words are going and shops. I articulated them, I stressed them a little bit more than the other words, the function words, which sometimes you can forget what they were, but I'm going to the shops. So I'm, to the, those are the function words. They help to put the sentence together, but they are not stressed. What we can also do, aside from content and function words, is if we really want to emphasize a word, we might just say it louder. So there's an example for you. When we speak, we tend to stress certain words that we really want to emphasize, and that's important to note as well. So my next tip is to learn and ignore discourse markers, or fillers is another way of calling them. So these are the words that natives use when they are thinking about what they're going to say next, and they don't really add any meaning to the sentence or what they are saying. Some examples could be anyway, basically, so, in fact, and there are many, many others too. So by learning these, what you can do is just ignore them, but also you can use them when you're speaking, because they're a great way of giving you some time to think about what you want to say next. They're a great tool in speaking more naturally, because rather than saying or just spending a lot of time thinking or not really knowing what to say, it's a great way to speak more naturally, to speak a bit faster, and also a great way to understand natives. So my final tip for you today is to learn English slang, expressions, idioms, and phrasal verbs. This is a great way to get to know the culture better, but it's also important to know that sometimes these things can be different, whether it's in the UK or in America or even other English-speaking countries also. We do use them a lot, so it's important to learn them, and once you get more comfortable with them, you will start to understand natives better, and then you can also start to use them when you're speaking too. A tip within a tip for this one is not to overuse them, however. It's great if you learn them and you start to use them within your speaking, but a danger is that learners tend to overuse them. So if you're using them a lot, your English will not sound as natural as you want it to be. This can be quite a daunting one because there's so much vocabulary, there are so many expressions to learn. So what I would advise you to do is to start off small and start off slowly. You can set yourself small targets such as learning 1 or 2 a day or a few a week, and then grow from there. Once you do start to learn more of these expressions and this slang vocabulary, then you're going to understand natives better and you will start to speak English faster too. If you want to learn these things in a fun, natural and convenient way, then I highly recommend that you check out our podcast, because we have a lot of episodes where we actually talk about this, and Ethan and I look at the difference between British and American English, slang, expressions and many other things, so it's a great place to start. You can find the link in the description box below so you can check that out later. So there you have it. Those are our 6 tips and tricks to speak English more fluently and understand natives better. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and if you want a more in-depth lesson on one of these tips today, let us know in the comments below and we'll make that lesson for you to help you achieve your English speaking goals.
What's up guys, I'm Ethan, your RealLife English fluency coach, and maybe like yourself, I am an introvert. But learning languages over the last 12 years has helped me a ton in being able to overcome the paralyzing shyness that I felt when I was younger. So let me tell you that if you are shy or you believe that maybe you're an introvert, that this does not need to be a barrier to being able to speak English fluently and confidently.